The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was a place built to inspire fear. Its walls were lined with glowing banners of 100 empires. Its ceiling stretched so high that shadows seemed to swallow the stars painted above, and its floor shone with polished stone that reflected the figures of those who ruled the galaxy. On that day, the chamber was filled with tension, every seat occupied by alien rulers, generals, and envoys. Their eyes glowed with pride, and their voices carried arrogance as they rose one by one, declaring the same command: humanity must surrender. A towering insectoid leader hissed, her voice sharp as metal, saying Earth was too young, too fragile, and too reckless to resist. Another reptilian warlord slammed his claws against the table, roaring that humanity must kneel or be crushed into dust. The words of surrender echoed again and again, bouncing through the chamber like chains tightening around Earth's throat. When the final voice fell silent, the chamber grew heavy with expectation. All eyes turned toward the small group of humans standing at the edge of the hall. They were not covered in armor or dressed in grand robes like the others. They wore simple uniforms, their faces calm, their bodies still. For a long moment, they said nothing. The silence stretched like a blade across the room, sharper than any weapon. Many aliens expected tears, perhaps pleas for mercy, perhaps bargaining for survival. But the humans only looked at one another. And then, softly at first, a sound broke the silence: laughter. It was not loud or mocking. It was quiet, deep, and strangely calm. A chuckle passed between them as though they had just heard a child's joke. The sound spread from one envoy to the next until all of them were smiling, their eyes burning with something that unsettled every alien in the room. The laughter was not madness. It was confidence. It was defiance. It was a refusal to bow. The alien leaders who had declared war leaned back in confusion, their pride cracking as unease crawled across their spines. This was not the reaction they had expected. The humans were supposed to tremble. Instead, they laughed. An avian delegate slammed his wings against the desk, demanding to know what they found so amusing. His voice cracked as he shouted, "Do you not understand? We demand your surrender. We declare war upon your world." But the humans only smiled more. One of them leaned forward slightly, his voice calm and steady, and asked, "Is that all?" The words struck the chamber like a thunderclap. Murmurs erupted among the council as arrogance turned to frustration. They could not understand how such a small, young species could answer power with laughter. The silence after that question was unbearable. The council leaders looked at one another, their earlier confidence fading. For centuries they had ruled through fear, crushing weaker races with threats, silencing rebellion with shows of force. But here, in front of them, stood a species that did not roar back or kneel. They simply laughed. That simple act frightened the galaxy more than any fleet ever could. Because laughter in the face of death was not the sound of weakness. It was the sound of predators who had nothing left to fear. Some tried to recover their arrogance. The insectoid leader hissed again, demanding immediate submission. The reptilian warlord bared his teeth and growled that Earth would burn if it resisted. But even their threats sounded thinner than before. The human envoys did not flinch. Their calm was heavier than steel, their silence louder than any shout. And when their laughter faded, what remained in their eyes was something far worse for the council: resolve. The chamber of the Galactic Council had witnessed countless declarations of war, countless surrenders signed under fear, countless speeches filled with pride. But never had it seen this. A species that did not shout, did not argue, did not bow. Humanity's reply was simple: silence, a question, and laughter that rang louder than any war drum. For the first time, the council felt something it had not known in centuries: doubt. And in that doubt, fear began to grow. The galaxy had demanded Earth's surrender. Humanity had answered with laughter. And though no weapons had been fired, no fleets had yet moved, the war had already begun, not in fire, but in silence that promised storms to come. The council chamber did not empty quickly after humanity's quiet chuckle. Instead, the sound seemed to linger, echoing through every corner of the vast hall like an invisible shadow. Alien rulers shifted in their seats, trying to mask their unease with scowls and sneers, but their eyes betrayed them. They had expected fear, submission, maybe even begging. What they received instead was laughter, and that laughter was something they could not control. The insectoid matriarch who had first demanded Earth's surrender rose again, her wings shivering with anger. She hissed loudly, declaring that humans were mocking the council, insulting the very order that held the galaxy together. Her words echoed with venom, yet when she paused to watch the humans, she saw no apology in their faces. They remained calm, as if her threats meant nothing. A reptilian warlord slammed his claws into the table so hard that cracks spread through the stone. His voice boomed like thunder as he demanded silence. He shouted that humanity had no right to laugh in the face of the galaxy's greatest powers. He told the chamber that humanity was a young race, barely crawling among the stars, and that the council had crushed far older and stronger civilizations before. He roared that Earth would burn unless they bowed their heads. His threats were met with nods from many allies, who cheered and shouted for war. But beneath their arrogance was a ripple of doubt they could not silence. The humans did not rise to argue. They did not scream or match the aliens in volume. They simply sat with faint smiles, their silence louder than the warlord's roars. To the council, this was unbearable. Their entire power had always rested on fear. Fear was the tool that kept empires in line. Fear was the weapon that bent worlds into submission. But humanity's laughter had stripped that fear away. They looked into the faces of a species that was not impressed by their threats, not crushed by their power, not shaken by their decrees. The council had demanded submission, but instead they had revealed their own weakness. An avian delegate rose, feathers bristling with fury. His sharp beak clicked as he accused the humans of arrogance, claiming they were too foolish to understand the consequences of their defiance. "You will drown in fire," he cried. "You will see your skies torn apart. Your people will beg us for mercy, and we will not give it." His words rang with rage, yet even as they fell, he noticed how the humans did not change. Not a single envoy flinched. Not a single pair of human eyes looked away. They watched him as if he was a child shouting empty threats. And then, one of the humans chuckled again, a soft, steady sound that cut deeper than any blade. The chamber erupted with voices. Some demanded immediate war. Others whispered warnings, their hearts uneasy. In the corner, one ancient elder rose slowly, his frame thin but his voice steady. He had lived long enough to remember fragments of history others had forgotten. "You do not understand what you face," he said, his voice low but heavy. The chamber quieted, for his words carried weight. "Humans are not like us. They do not break as we break. They come from a world that should have killed them 1,000 times over, yet they survived. When they laugh in the face of death, it is not foolishness. It is a promise. They are telling you they will not kneel. They are telling you they are already prepared to fight." His warning struck the chamber like cold wind, but many refused to hear. Pride and arrogance drowned his words, and the younger rulers mocked him, calling him senile, saying he was blinded by old myths. Still, the doubt remained. Even the proudest leaders could not shake the sound of that laughter. It was not the loud laughter of arrogance. It was quiet, calm, and filled with something far worse, certainty. Humanity's silence, broken only by soft chuckles, was more frightening than any roar of defiance could have been. Because it meant they were not bluffing. It meant they were ready. Back on Earth, the first reports of the Council's demand reached human leaders. Families listened in their homes as broadcasts carried the alien voices demanding surrender. Soldiers heard the words in their barracks, and workers heard them in the factories. But instead of despair, the same thing happened that had shaken the Council. People laughed. They laughed not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. A galaxy that had never walked Earth's storms, never fought Earth's endless wars, never felt Earth's burning skies, dared to tell humanity to kneel. The people of Earth knew what the Council did not. Humanity had never bowed to anything, not even to their own destruction. The Galactic Council's arrogance only grew in its official proclamations. They declared humans reckless and fragile, warned other races not to ally with them, and promised swift victory if Earth resisted. They spoke with confidence to hide their fear, but the cracks were showing. Their threats sounded less like strength and more like desperation. And across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. Merchants and travelers who had dealt with humans before remembered their stubbornness. Soldiers who had fought beside them in smaller wars told tales of their resilience. The laughter that had shaken the chamber now echoed far beyond it, repeated in rumors and stories, unsettling entire systems. The Council had demanded Earth's surrender with arrogance. Humanity had answered with laughter. And now the galaxy was caught between pride and fear, unsure which side of history it was standing on. The leaders still roared, but their words no longer carried the same weight. The humans had shown them something new, that arrogance could be broken not with weapons, not with speeches, but with a simple chuckle that promised storms on the horizon. The Council's demand reached Earth like a shadow stretching across the stars. It was carried by transmissions, broadcast across human colonies, replayed on every channel, and whispered in every corner of the planet. The words were the same in every translation: surrender, humans. Bow before the Galactic Council or be destroyed. The message was clear, arrogant, and final. Yet the reaction it sparked was not what the Council had imagined. On Earth, the words did not create fear. They created laughter. At first it was soft, a chuckle in a crowded hall as the alien voice echoed. Then it spread like fire through the cities, across the continents, and up into the colonies orbiting the skies. The Council had meant to strike terror into humanity, but instead they had made themselves a joke. In the great chamber of the United Earth Council, leaders sat in silence after the message finished. They did not rush into speeches or panic as alien rulers expected. They exchanged quiet glances, their eyes reflecting not fear but memory. Every one of them remembered what humanity had endured. They remembered the endless wars that scarred Earth before it reached the stars. They remembered the plagues, the disasters, the storms that would have broken any other species. They remembered rising again and again from ashes that should have buried them forever. And when they thought of surrender, the very idea felt absurd. Humanity had never surrendered to itself, even when the world turned against them. Why would they surrender to outsiders who had no idea what Earth truly was? The silence in the chamber broke when one of the leaders chuckled, shaking his head slowly. "They think we will kneel," he said softly. "They think we are afraid." His laughter spread to the others, not mocking but steady and full of certainty. Soon the entire chamber was filled with quiet chuckles, and that sound, carried by reporters and broadcasts, spread faster than the Council's message itself. Families gathered around their screens and laughed together. Soldiers in their barracks pounded their fists against the tables and laughed like thunder. Workers in factories wiped sweat from their brows and laughed with pride. The galaxy had declared humanity's defeat, but humanity answered with humor, a defiance deeper than any roar. But laughter was not all that spread. Beneath the calm and smiles, preparation began. The military was placed on silent alert. Fleets that had been scattered across colonies began to recall, their movements hidden from alien eyes. Old ships were pulled from storage, reforged with new weapons. Factories lit up the night skies as engines roared, producing machines built not for defense but for survival. Scientists unlocked projects once shelved as too dangerous, reviving weapons designed to change the balance of power. Every hammer strike and every engine test carried the same unspoken vow: humanity would not bow. The Council believed laughter meant arrogance. They did not understand it was something else entirely. Laughter was a shield, a message carried not just to their enemies but to themselves. It was a reminder that they had faced worse and survived. It was a warning to the galaxy that fear would never chain them. On the streets of Earth cities, people painted words on walls: "We do not surrender." On the colonies of Mars and Titan, families hung banners across their homes with a single phrase: "Let them come." Humanity's unity had never been stronger. In the Council's own chamber far away, alien leaders watched recordings of this strange response. They could not understand how a species so young could laugh at the threat of destruction. Some dismissed it as madness, others as weakness, but a few saw it for what it was: certainty. Those few shivered, warning the others that laughter from Deathworlders was never safe. But their warnings were drowned in arrogance. The majority still believed Earth was fragile. They believed humanity's silence was fear and their laughter was foolish pride. They were wrong. The preparations deepened. Fleets vanished from alien scanners, not because they were destroyed, but because they no longer wished to be seen. Human warships moved into hidden positions, their engines dark, their signals masked. Colonies sent coded transmissions, strengthening defense grids and stockpiling supplies. Soldiers trained without rest, their movements sharp, their resolve iron. Children in schools whispered about the Council's threats, but even they laughed, repeating the words back as if they were part of a play. The fear the Council had hoped to spread had turned into the opposite. It became fuel, fire in every human heart. One night, in a military outpost on the edge of the solar system, a commander stood before his troops. The message of surrender was replayed on a large screen, the alien voice echoing across the cold air. When it ended, silence followed, and the soldiers looked to their leader. He did not speak with anger or rage. He simply laughed once, a deep, steady sound, and then said, "You all know why we are here. You all know what they demand. But we are not here to kneel. We are here to fight, because we are human, and humans do not bow." The soldiers erupted in cheers, their voices shaking the outpost like thunder rolling across steel. The Council's demand had reached Earth, but its power had already been broken. They had wanted humanity to tremble. Instead, they had unified them like never before. Families, leaders, soldiers, and children all stood together under the same truth. Surrender was not an option. Humanity's answer was laughter, and that laughter promised something the galaxy was not ready for. It promised that the storm was already gathering. The Council's arrogance had begun the game. Humanity's response had changed the rules. And though no battle had yet been fought, the war had already begun, not with weapons, but with laughter that shook the stars. The Galactic Council chamber no longer carried the same thunderous confidence it once had. The demand for Earth's surrender had been made, and yet the answer that came back was laughter. That laughter spread across the stars faster than any fleet, carried in recordings and whispers, until even the walls of the Council chamber seemed to echo with it. Delegates shifted in their seats uneasily, some tapping their claws against stone desks, others fluttering their wings in irritation. The arrogance that had once united them was cracking, and the chamber was beginning to divide. At one end of the chamber, the reptilian warlord rose again, scales glistening under the chamber lights. He roared for silence, slamming his clawed fists down on the table. His voice thundered through the room, declaring that humans were reckless fools who needed to be crushed before their laughter turned into defiance. "They mock us," he shouted, his fangs bared. "They think themselves untouchable, but they are weak. They are young. They must be destroyed before their arrogance spreads." His words found support among the younger races, who shouted in agreement, slamming their hands, claws, or appendages on their desks to show their rage. But across the chamber, others looked uneasy. A feline envoy stood, her golden eyes sharp as blades. Her voice was low, controlled, but heavy with warning. "You do not hear what that laughter means," she said. "It is not arrogance. It is certainty. They laughed because they have already decided. They will not kneel, not now, not ever. And if we push them, they will not stop at defending themselves. They will come for us." Her words drew scoffs from the reptilian warlord, who spat and called her a coward. But others in the chamber leaned forward, their expressions grim. They too had felt the chill of that laughter, the strange weight behind it. An avian delegate with feathers bright as fire screeched from his perch. "They are deathwelders," he hissed, "and you all know the old stories. They thrive in storms that would kill us. They bleed and rise again. If their laughter means anything, it is this: they are ready. And if they are ready, then we should fear." His words filled the chamber with silence for a long, uneasy moment. No one wanted to admit it, but the thought was already growing in their minds. The insectoid matriarch rose, her wings clattering with irritation. She accused the fearful of spreading weakness. "We are the Council," she hissed. "We command the stars. What are humans compared to us? A single planet. A young race barely learning to walk. We could destroy them with a single fleet." Her arrogance filled the air, and many nodded along, comforted by her pride. Yet the unease would not vanish. They had seen the recordings of human laughter. They had seen how the people of Earth, Mars, and the colonies answered their threats with calm humor instead of trembling. The arrogance of the council no longer felt like strength. It felt like denial. In the corner of the chamber, an elder from an ancient aquatic race raised his voice. He was so old his scales had dulled to gray, and his voice was heavy with centuries of memory. "You have forgotten history," he said quietly. The chamber fell silent again, for even the proudest leaders still respected his age. "You believe humans are weak because they are young among the stars. But youth does not mean weakness. Youth means hunger. Youth means fire. When they laugh at your threats, it is not because they are blind. It is because they know what they will do when you strike. They are warning you, and you are too proud to listen." His words hung in the air like smoke, choking the arrogance from many who had been shouting moments earlier. The divide in the chamber widened. Some shouted for war, declaring humanity must be destroyed before their defiance spread. Others urged caution, whispering that humans should be left alone, that their laughter was not to be tested. The chamber, once unified in pride, now fractured into two halves. Prideful arrogance on one side, fearful doubt on the other. Neither side could overpower the other, and so the chamber dissolved into chaos, voices crashing against one another like storms on stone. Meanwhile, outside the chamber, whispers spread across the galaxy. Traders spoke of human fleets moving strangely, vanishing from scanners. Miners claimed to have seen human warships in places they should not be. Merchants shared stories of colonies going silent, not from fear but from preparation. The laughter of humanity had sparked a fire of rumors, and with each retelling, the galaxy grew more uneasy. Back on Earth, the people heard of the Council's division, and their response was the same as before. They laughed. To them, the arrogance of the Council was nothing new. Humanity had seen arrogance before, on Earth itself, in the wars and empires of their own history. They knew what came of pride that blinded rulers. And so they prepared, not with noise or boasting, but with silence and work. Fleets were armed. Soldiers trained. Scientists built weapons the galaxy had never seen. And through it all, laughter remained their answer. The Galactic Council had demanded Earth's surrender, and now they argued among themselves about what to do next. But while they argued, humanity acted. And though no shots had yet been fired, the true war had already begun, not on battlefields, but in the minds of those who heard that laughter and understood its meaning. The Council was divided. Humanity was united. And that difference would decide what came next. In the weeks that followed the Council's demand and Earth's laughter, strange patterns began to spread across the galaxy. Alien scouts reported that human fleets, once visible on trade routes and border patrols, had begun to vanish. Colonies that once sent regular transmissions fell strangely quiet. Outposts that had always been bustling with trade and chatter now went dark, their signals replaced with silence. At first, the Council interpreted these signs as weakness. "Look at them," the reptilian warlord sneered during a closed session. "They retreat into their shells like frightened hatchlings. They know their doom approaches." His words sparked cheers from the proud, but beyond the chamber walls, the galaxy whispered something different. Silence was not weakness. Silence was warning. On Earth, the factories roared with life. Massive engines thundered in underground complexes, sparks from welders lit the skies of shipyards, and smoke rose in great plumes as humanity reforged itself for war. Old ships that had been stored in museums were stripped for parts, their ancient frames reborn with new weapons. Engineers worked without sleep, turning every design into something sharper, stronger, faster. In hidden labs, scientists unlocked projects that had been shelved for decades. Dangerous technologies too powerful for peacetime, now deemed necessary for survival. The hum of machines became the heartbeat of Earth, steady and unbroken. The Council believed humanity had gone silent out of fear. In truth, they had gone silent because they were building a storm. On Mars, soldiers trained day and night in the dust-red plains, their voices carrying across the desert winds. They drilled in silence, No chants or roars, only the sharp rhythm of boots and the crack of weapons. Each soldier knew what was at stake. This was not a war for resources or pride. This was a war for survival, a war against those who dared to demand humanity's surrender. And when humanity fought for survival, they fought with everything. On Titan, hidden beneath icy seas, entire fleets were constructed in secret. Warships slid into dark waters, their engines cloaked, their signals masked. No alien eye would ever detect them until it was too late. Meanwhile, across alien space, confusion spread. Traders who dared venture near human borders reported seeing massive shapes moving in the void, larger than anything they had seen before. Yet when scanners tried to capture them, nothing appeared. Ghost fleets, some called them. Others said they were hallucinations, tricks of fear. But then convoys began to vanish. Entire cargo fleets disappeared without a trace, leaving only silence where their distress calls should have been. Pirates who had once preyed on human merchants now went missing, their bases found burned and shattered, no survivors left behind. The galaxy wanted to believe this was chance, but deep inside, many knew better. Humanity was sharpening its blade. Inside the Galactic Council, the divide grew worse. Some races demanded a first strike before humanity could act. They are preparing. The feline envoy warned. They are not hiding. They are building. And when they are ready, none of us will be safe. But her voice was drowned out by the insectoid matriarch, who clicked her wings and hissed, "Let them build. Let them prepare. It changes nothing. They cannot stand against us." The reptilian warlord supported her with thunderous roars, demanding fleets be sent to blockade Earth, to strangle them before their preparations could take root. But still, some of the older species whispered warnings. They had seen this before in fragments of history, in stories passed down through generations. Humans never retreated in fear. When humans vanished into silence, it meant something far worse. On Earth itself, ordinary people felt the weight of what was coming, but they did not despair. Families hung banners from their homes with words like "We stand together and we do not kneel." In crowded markets and quiet villages alike, laughter still filled the air. It was not laughter of arrogance or foolishness. It was laughter of defiance, the kind that said, "You cannot break us, no matter what you try." Children drew pictures of human warships flying through the stars, while their parents whispered stories of old wars where humanity had risen from fire and ashes. The Council had tried to terrify them, but instead, it had united them. From the outside, to alien eyes, Earth and its colonies looked like they had withdrawn into silence. But beneath that silence was motion, furious and unstoppable. Every hammer strike in the factories, every boot step on the training grounds, every spark in the shipyards was part of the same answer. Humanity would not surrender. They would meet arrogance with steel, and they would meet threats with fire. The galaxy, however, continued to misread the signs. They looked at the disappearing fleets and quiet colonies and thought humanity was retreating. They told themselves the humans were frightened, hiding from the storm. But the truth was darker. Humanity was not retreating. They were coiling, pulling their strength inward, preparing to strike. The laughter that had first unsettled the Council was still echoing in every human heart. And that laughter carried a promise the galaxy did not yet understand. The shadows of defiance stretched longer with each passing day. Alien eyes looked into the void and thought it empty. But it was not empty. It was filled with human warships, human soldiers, and human resolve, waiting in silence. And when that silence finally broke, the stars themselves would shake. The silence ended not with words, but with fire. It began on the far edge of Council-controlled space, in a quiet sector no one paid much attention to. A patrol fleet of the Council drifted through the void, their ships heavy with pride but light with caution. They believed humanity was still hiding, still trembling in fear. The commanders joked about how quickly Earth would fall once the Council finally decided to strike. But then the void around them shifted. Sensors screamed warnings, but by the time they reacted, it was already too late. From the darkness, human warships emerged like ghosts tearing through a curtain. Their engines were silent, their movements precise, their weapons glowing with a deadly calm. The Council fleet scrambled, shouting orders, but humanity's attack was not loud or messy. It was sharp, surgical, unstoppable. One by one, the alien ships exploded in flashes of white fire, their wreckage scattering like ash across the stars. The humans moved in silence, communicating with signals too fast for alien scanners to catch. Within minutes, an entire fleet that had once guarded a sector was gone, erased as if it had never existed. The survivors screamed into their comms, begging for reinforcements, but their signals were cut mid-sentence. By the time their transmissions reached the Council, only silence answered back. News of the attack spread quickly, though details were scarce. Some claimed the humans had deployed weapons no one had ever seen. Others swore they had unleashed storms of light that bent through shields like they weren't even there. In truth, the power of the humans was not in secret weapons. It was in their resolve, in the precision of a people who had prepared in silence and struck without hesitation. The galaxy had expected humans to roar, to boast, to meet arrogance with noise. Instead, they struck like a shadow, and shadows left nothing behind but fear. In the council chamber, chaos erupted. Delegates shouted over one another, some demanding immediate retaliation, others calling for negotiations. Reports piled in of other fleets going dark, of human ships appearing where they should not exist. The insectoid matriarch hissed furiously, demanding more fleets be sent to crush Earth once and for all. But the feline envoy, her voice sharp with fear, countered, "Do you not see? They have already begun. They are not hiding. They are hunting." Her words chilled the room, though many still refused to believe. Pride was a chain too heavy to break. Meanwhile, on Earth, the people listened quietly to the news of the first strike. Soldiers smiled grimly. Families held each other tighter, proud of the message their fleets had delivered. There were no cheers of arrogance, no wild celebrations. The humans did not roar in triumph. They did not need to. Their silence was victory enough. They knew this was only the beginning. More battles would come, greater storms would rise, but they had proven something the galaxy could never ignore again. Humanity would not bow. Alien capitals across the stars grew restless. Civilians whispered in fear, staring at the skies and wondering when the human ships would appear above their worlds. Fleets were recalled, defenses strengthened, but nothing could erase the memory of how quickly the first clash had ended. Entire armadas gone in minutes, without warning, without mercy. The galaxy had always believed strength came from numbers, from the size of fleets, from the power of weapons. Humanity showed them that true strength came from resolve, and from the silence of a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. The older alien officer who had once warned about humanity's nature heard the news and closed his eyes. He whispered to himself, "It has begun." He remembered the laughter of the humans in the council chamber, quiet but certain. Now he understood it fully. The laughter had not been mockery. It had been promise. A promise that no matter what the council demanded, humanity would never surrender. And now that promise burned across the stars. The first clash was only the beginning. More patrols went dark. More fleets were erased. The council struggled to understand how humans moved so quickly, how they struck with such precision. But the truth was simple. While the council had argued, humanity had prepared. While the council shouted threats, humanity sharpened its blade. While the council demanded surrender, humanity laughed, and then they struck. The galaxy trembled, for it finally began to understand what that laughter truly meant. It was not the sound of weakness. It was not the sound of arrogance. It was the sound of a storm breaking, of predators rising, of a species that would not kneel. The council had demanded surrender. Humanity had answered with silence, and now with fire. And the stars themselves seemed to shudder at what was coming next. The galaxy had not yet recovered from the first human strikes when a deeper terror began to spread. News traveled fast, faster than fleets could move, carried by frightened traders and broken transmissions from dying ships. Entire patrols had gone dark. Fleets that once boasted of their strength had been reduced to wreckage in minutes. The council had demanded Earth's surrender with arrogance, but now their capitals trembled beneath the weight of fear. Across the stars, Civilians looked up at their skies with unease, whispering that the humans might already be above them, waiting in silence. In the Galactic Council chamber, the arguments grew more desperate. The reptilian warlord roared louder than ever, his claws leaving scars on the stone table. "We must strike now," he thundered. "Burn their planet to ash before their shadow grows any longer." His voice carried pride, but beneath it was fear he could not hide. The insectoid matriarch flared her wings, insisting humanity's victories were only luck, tricks of surprise, nothing more. But her sharp words did not erase the unease in her movements, the trembling of her claws as she gripped the edge of her podium. Others spoke with quieter voices, and their whispers carried further than the roars. The feline envoy's golden eyes narrowed as she addressed the chamber. "You call their victories luck, but how many times can luck destroy entire fleets in minutes? How many times can luck strike with such precision?" Her voice grew colder. "This is not luck. This is war, and we are already losing." Her words silenced the chamber for a moment, and in that silence, the weight of truth settled over them like a storm cloud. Reports poured in faster than the council could process. A convoy of warships near the rim had been erased. A supply station critical to the council's fleet collapsed into fire. Colonies whispered of ghost ships seen drifting just outside their borders, ships with human markings that vanished the moment they were scanned. No matter how many reports arrived, they all carried the same message: humanity was no longer waiting. They were everywhere, unseen until they chose to strike, and once they struck, nothing survived. Meanwhile, on Earth, the mood was steady, calm, unshaken. Families gathered to hear the news of victories, and though they did not celebrate with arrogance, their pride ran deep. Mothers held their children closer, knowing the fight was not yet over, but also knowing humanity would never surrender. Soldiers sharpened their weapons, prepared for the battles still to come. Leaders spoke quietly to their people, reminding them that the war was not about conquest or pride. It was about survival, about defiance, about proving to the galaxy that humanity would never bow. Human fleets continued to move in silence. They appeared above alien worlds with no warning, their warships dark against the suns. Cities below froze in terror as shadows of human battleships covered their skies. Yet those fleets did not fire immediately. They hovered, engines humming like distant thunder, their weapons aimed but quiet. Then a single transmission would echo through every channel, every device, every mind in those cities: "We do not surrender." The words were simple, steady, and terrifying. They were not shouted, not dramatized. They were spoken with the certainty of a species that had already decided its path. And then, as quickly as they came, the fleets vanished back into the void, leaving behind nothing but silence. That silence was heavier than any bombardment. Entire populations cowered under it. Leaders who had once mocked humanity now whispered in fear, wondering when their own capitals would be next. In homes across alien worlds, parents warned their children never to speak of harming humans, never to joke about Earth, never to forget the sight of warships blotting out their skies. Humanity had become not just an enemy, but a shadow, a storm waiting above them. The Council tried to rally strength. Fleets were recalled, defenses reinforced, weapons armed. But no matter how many ships they built, the fear remained. They remembered how quickly their patrols had been erased, how easily their fleets had been outmaneuvered. For every fleet they launched, rumors spread of humanity already being behind them, already watching. Their arrogance had been shattered, and in its place grew dread. The older alien officer who had once warned his comrades now lived as a witness. He spoke to anyone who would listen, describing the cages, the silence, and the storm that followed. His words carried weight because they matched what everyone now saw. "Do you not understand?" he asked, his voice trembling with memory. "They laugh because they do not fear you. They strike because they are already ready to die for what is theirs. And when a species is not afraid to die, you cannot conquer them. You can only fall before them." His warnings spread through refugee camps, through council chambers, through markets, until they became a truth no one could ignore. The galaxy's arrogance had turned to terror. Human laughter, once mocked as foolishness, was now remembered as the sound of defiance, the sound of predators who refused to bow. The council had demanded surrender. Humanity had answered with silence, with shadows, and with fire. And now every capital, every fleet, every leader waited in dread for the moment when the laughter would no longer be distant, but right above them. The fear had spread. And fear, once planted, could not be erased. The galaxy had demanded Earth's surrender, and Earth had answered with laughter. That laughter turned into silence, and the silence turned into fire. By the time the last echoes of the first battles had faded, the truth was already clear. The Council had misjudged humanity. Entire fleets had been erased, stations destroyed, and worlds left trembling as human warships appeared above their skies only to vanish again without a trace. Fear had spread like wildfire, and now the galaxy sat in uneasy silence, waiting for what would come next. The Council had lost its arrogance, and in its place was something far more dangerous, respect wrapped in terror. The final lesson came not with another great battle but with a simple truth that even the proudest leaders could not deny. Humanity did not fight for conquest. They did not fight for wealth, or territory, or prestige. They fought because they refused to bow. When the Council demanded surrender, they laughed. When the Council sent fleets, they destroyed them. When the galaxy trembled, humanity spoke only a single line: "We do not surrender." That line had become more powerful than any weapon, for it lived now in the minds of every ruler, every soldier, every parent across the stars. In the council chamber, silence hung heavy. Delegates who once shouted with arrogance now spoke in whispers, their voices cautious, their words uncertain. The reptilian warlord no longer roared with confidence. His eyes were sunken, his claws tapping nervously against the table. The insectoid matriarch who once mocked humanity now avoided even speaking their name, her wings twitching with unease whenever their shadow was mentioned. Only the feline envoy and the ancient elders dared to speak the truth aloud. "You see now what they are," the feline said, her golden eyes cutting through the room. "They do not kneel. They will never kneel. To demand it again is not strength, it is suicide." No one argued with her, not even those who once ridiculed her warnings. Outside the chambers, the galaxy had already changed. On alien worlds, stories of human defiance spread faster than fire in dry fields. Parents told their children of the day the Council demanded Earth's surrender and humanity laughed in reply. In markets and taverns, travelers whispered of human fleets that moved like shadows, appearing and vanishing at will. Some said they were demons born from their death world. Others said they were guardians forged by suffering, but all agreed on one truth: they could not be broken. The words "we do not surrender" became a warning carved into every conversation, every story, every memory. On Earth, life went on with a strange calm. The rescued children played again in the streets, their laughter brighter than the Council's arrogance had ever been. Families who had once feared for their survival now stood proud, knowing the galaxy understood the cost of touching what was theirs. Soldiers returned from the front with quiet eyes, carrying both scars and pride. They did not boast of their victories, for they knew the war was not about glory. It was about survival, about proving to the stars that humanity would never kneel. And in their silence, there was strength. The final message came not from fleets or weapons but from presence. Human warships appeared above several major council capitals, their black hulls blotting out suns, their weapons aimed but silent. Panic gripped the streets, yet the ships did not fire. Instead, a single transmission rang through every city, every home, every chamber of government. The voice was calm, steady, and certain. "We are humanity. We do not surrender. Remember this, and remember well." Then, just as they had come, the ships vanished into the void. Not a single shot was fired. The silence that followed was more terrifying than destruction. For the Council knew that if humanity had chosen to fire, their cities would already be ash. From that day, the Council stopped speaking of surrender. They no longer dared to issue demands to Earth. Instead, they built laws in their chambers declaring all children untouchable, all threats against humanity forbidden. They did not pass these laws out of kindness, but out of fear. They had seen the storm humanity carried, and they wanted no part of it again. Humanity's laughter had become legend, a story told across generations, not as mockery but as warning. And so the lesson was carved into the stars. The galaxy learned that strength was not in arrogance, not in numbers, not in fleets. True strength was in resolve, in unity, in the will to stand unbroken when the universe demanded submission. Humanity embodied that strength. They had been underestimated, mocked, and threatened, but they never bowed. They answered with laughter, with silence, and with fire. And from that day forward, every species remembered. When the council demanded surrender, Earth laughed, and that laughter shook the stars.